So with the Advanced Swords of Justice starting very soon for War Thunder, I really wanted to go over what I would think would be better vehicles for the event than what we're currently getting, which is a Jaguar for India. Now, by no means do I think it's an extremely bad vehicle. I think honestly it's probably really good, especially if you don't already have some sort of cast elements for your ground forces for Britain at around like 10.3 to 10.7. But at the same time, I feel like, to me at least, I don't really want to call it lazy, but I feel like this is kind of like an underwhelming event, because for me, I don't really need a Jaguar that just has 2 magic 2s, and the only big difference between the one within the tech tree is going to be those magic 2s and just losing a gun. So I 100% understand in an ARB sense, it's going to be able to face, probably like 9.7s or 9.3s, just depending on, how Gaijin is feeling that day. Magic 2s are just going to whack them every single time, especially if they don't have flares, but you could pretty much already do that with, AIM-9Gs within the Jaguar itself. Now, for me, I don't really prefer this vehicle because I don't need it. And I feel like some people will enjoy this, especially people who, just want to see India represented within the game. I assume a lot of people are going to be using this thing and the Bhishma together. But for me, I wanted to make a video called basically what I would want instead of this, Jaguar, which is just basically copy paste. So since this is an air event, basically I just want to go on aircraft. Like, I want to see some stuff that I would personally like within these types of events. Definitely, if you have your own opinions or own vehicles that you'd like to see whenever it comes to this, definitely leave those in the comments, because I think it's very interesting to maybe even learn about some new aircraft that I didn't even know about, because as you know, there's just Frankensteins all over the place. But the honest truth about it is, I don't really think there's really many that I would say for minor nations within War Thunder, like Japan or, like Israel and stuff like that. Honestly, the only ones that you're really going to see a lot of just crazy prototype vehicles that could easily be added as event vehicles will be for, the main 3, mainly being America, Russia, maybe Germany / Britain a little bit. But yeah, we're going to be doing that. And you know what? Let's see how you guys like my suggestions. So the first vehicle that I'm actually going to suggest is still from India, and I think it would have made an amazing event vehicle compared to, the Jaguar. Like, I do understand it's just going to be kind of like a lineup filler, especially for people who just get the Bhishma, but at the same time, the Marut. So if you don't know what the HF-24 Marut is, it's basically you take a Hawker Hunter and you downgrade it just a little bit on the engine power, and it's just made in India. It's basically I think it's their first like production available aircraft that they personally made, not just like, bought from a different country. Honestly, it's very interesting. It's just like a Hawker Hunter, to be honest with you. It's got the 30mm Aidrons in the front. It also has some rockets. It can carry some bombs. It should overall be a really good, multi-role cast aircraft for War Thunder, and it'll probably be at around the battle ratings of 9.0, 9.3, somewhere in that, ballpark area. Now, the thing about the HF-24, the Marut, is that it's already been made technically. So Nova, which is a creator whenever it comes to War Thunder, he has created a bunch of models for the game, like I-152, the Scimitar F1, the AR-196, which was that little B float plane. You also have the IR-81. So definitely the models that he's made within War Thunder have, seen the game. Now, at the same time, you're seeing footage of this, which is actually one of his models he's put on War Thunder Live, but at the same time, it's a very highly unfinished model. I'm not really sure if the guy has actually stopped working on it. I'm not really sure what's happening with the vehicle itself, but overall, it's a really cool concept of a vehicle, and I would have loved to see it within War Thunder. And honestly, it would just been a huge, a hugely better event vehicle than what we currently have now. Now, the only thing about the HF-24 Marut is that it basically was already, obsolete by the time it was created. Like I just tried to explain to you, it was a Hawker Hunter, but made in India. So why not just buy Hawker Hunters and, not really have to worry about the actual, production of this vehicle itself. And, you can rely on Britain and all that sort of stuff. But it's a very interesting aircraft. I'm not really going to go too in depth of the historical, things about this aircraft in general, because I think, it's very important for you guys to actually go look at that sort of stuff. But it's very, entertaining that some of the World War II, like German aircraft, like the FW-200, I do believe, the guy who helped create that vehicle was actually someone who helped create the HF-24, which was just, honestly, in my opinion, a really cool thing. So the next aircraft is just a very interesting one, and it is the F9F Panther with the Emerson turret. So basically what this thing is let's imagine that you take a fighter and you're like, hey, let's put a bomber turret gunner on it and make the pilot also command this, bomber turret gunner and try to do everything a fighter should be able to do at the same time. Basically, that's what it is. So back in the days of, those early, jet fighters like the F9F, you had the issue of bombers. Strategic bombers definitely were a thing, like the B-29, coming up was the Tu-4. You had a bunch of issues with like, hey, these things are going to be the main threats, especially since nukes were now a huge thing. We need, different things to take out these strategic bombers. So America's, amazing ingenuity came up with the idea of, hey, let's actually just make a turret onto a fighter jet. And what this could actually, accomplish is that the fighter could go on top of a bomber, it could go on the side of a bomber, it could go under the bomber, and you would basically be able to shoot up, shoot down, shoot left, and shoot right of the bomber that you're going after. You do not have to get behind it to, get in the tail gunner view and get shot down. Basically, that's what its whole job was. Now, at the end of the day, the problems involving this little thing was the fact of, you had someone who had to pilot the aircraft while having to run the radar and trying to shoot down a bomber all at the same time. So it definitely was a job that needed someone else to be in the aircraft to help with, but it just wasn't going to happen like that. Now, the other thing about it is that missiles and as well as just other things that could shoot down heavy bombers very reliably started coming about. So this thing basically was useless before it could ever come off the designer table. So to actually make this thing work within War Thunder, I think would be a little bit complex because we don't have anything like it within the game of where your main turret or your main guns would be able to move around and be able to shoot at different angles. But correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if someone knows like better than I do about this machinery. But I think that you can lock the nose, of the turret, in place and be able to shoot just like a normal fighter would. Now, at the end of the day, it's just 50 cals on the F9F Panther. So it's probably a little bit of a downgrade, to be honest with you. But at the same time, it's very interesting. It would be an amazing event vehicle to add to War Thunder because it doesn't really serve a purpose of being added as a premium. It doesn't really serve a purpose of being added as a, actual tech tree because, it's a very niche scenario vehicle that, it would be useful in. I mean, it could still, hunt after TU4s and everything, which would be pretty cool about it. But yeah, I don't think that it's going to be a huge, big thing, but it's just really cool and really cool concept that I would really love to just see how War Thunder kind of works out and gets it to actually work within the game. So the next one is for the Soviet Union, and it's probably a vehicle that you're really excited to come just in general, and that's the IL-102. So the IL-102 is basically an SU-25, but looks very funky. I mean, that's really the easiest way to put it whenever it comes to, layman's terms of what this vehicle is. It has a bunch of missiles, it has a bunch of guided munitions, it has pretty much everything an SU-25 would have, but at the same time, it's just ugly and has a actual rear turret gunner, which honestly is just pretty entertaining to think about. Of, a very high BR vehicle, within War Thunder's terms, having a rear turret, which you really never have to worry about whenever it comes in War Thunder. But honestly, it's just a really decently cool vehicle. I don't think that it's going to outcompete the SU-25. It's probably going to be very heavy when it comes to this vehicle. As you know, it is an IL, so the IL-2 family of, aircraft, so they are definitely heavy, but they can definitely take a beating. Honestly, the thing about it is that if you add everything within this vehicle, let's just say the R60Ms, or you add the R73s, I feel like this vehicle would be very over-tiered for what it is, just like the SU-39s are right now, or the SU-25T. To me, at least, what I would do for this vehicle is I would honestly kind of just do the Gaijin formula of removing some armaments, so it's just a lower battle rating. So you're actually able to take this vehicle into, maybe even like a 9-7 game or something like that by just removing the missiles and removing, what I would consider the, quote unquote, 11-0, bracket area of this vehicle, because some of these vehicles just feel very poor whenever it comes to War Thunder. And maybe once they introduce that new system of actually having different BRs for different game modes, then you can start adding the stuff back of where, it can be, just a little bit better. Because as you know, these vehicles in RRB, they're just basically dead weight on your team. But in ground, they're pretty decent. So their BR definitely gets adjusted by that right now, which is kind of a little bit of a bad thing. But the IL-102, a very interesting aircraft, a very cool looking aircraft to me, because how people say the SU-25 frog foot? This thing looks more like a frog than the SU-25 does. So honestly, pretty cool, event vehicle to me at least. I don't really think it could serve well within the tech tree, but it is cool nonetheless. So the final suggestion that I have is a little bit of a controversial one, but I think at the same time, it is one that makes the most sense as of right now, and that is the YF-17. So if you don't know what the YF-17 is, it's an F-18 prototype. That's basically, to put it in layman's terms, of what it is. Now, the thing about it is that the F-18 in War Thunder is coming, at some time. It's going to be coming through the American tech tree. Britain will probably also get one, the CF-18. There's just a ton of F-18s that are going to come about whenever it comes to those updates of War Thunder. The thing about it is that I feel like if they put an event vehicle out, which is the YF-17, which currently fits into the meta of War Thunder, just mainly being, missiles, and as well as just being, the basics whenever it comes to what we have now. It should honestly perform very well, depending on, what happens to it. And it's a vehicle that I think once the F-18 comes out, it's just basically DOA. Because why would people want to, get an event vehicle, which is the YF-17, which is just a worse F-18? And I feel like if they actually did this vehicle now, it would generate a ton of hype for, the F-18. Like, you're like, oh, cool, it's the YF-17. I'm actually able to, get something that's, early tech of an F-18, kind of feels the same. And, it would be pretty cool. Just like they kind of did with the F-16s, where they kind of released the first ones first, and then we got the heavy hitters like the F-16C and all that sort of stuff whenever it comes to those vehicles. The YF-17 is pretty cool. It would have its air-to-air missile loadout. It would have a ton of liveries on it, which is cool. You have like the whole NASA one and everything. The only thing that I really think would be like kind of sad about this vehicle is that honestly, I don't think it will come like ever whenever it comes to War Thunder. It's one of those vehicles I kind of put on the same like pedestal as like the Delta Dagger, Delta Dart, all these vehicles that for at least when the Americans sent, they kind of just skipped over. Gaijin skipped over them because to me, they don't really serve much of a hype thing whenever it comes to War Thunder. And that's one of the controversies I think a lot of people have talked about, is that Gaijin kind of just went ahead and just said, hey, we're just going to get the most popular aircraft within, these tech trees, like the F-16, the F-15, and kind of skipping over some of the cooler, stuff like the Voodoo and all that sort of stuff whenever it comes to War Thunder. Like, honestly, if the F-18 comes, I don't ever see the YF-17 coming unless they, want to do something crazy for it. But right now would be the perfect time. It would have time to, shine as a pretty decent little fighter. But as soon as, its equivalent comes, which is the F-18, there's basically no reason to use this thing other than it being like a lower BR because, it is just technically worse. So yeah, what do you guys think about my list of event aircraft that I wish would have came instead of the Jaguar? Honestly, man, like, I really want to do this event, but I don't need this vehicle. And it kind of feels like that scenario of whenever they do the 3 major events of like where there's one, heavy hitter, which would have been the Object 292. And now we're kind of in the aircraft sector where it's just another ground attacker that doesn't really serve a purpose, for me at least, because I already have lineups that kind of, do the same thing. The only big difference is the Magic 2s, and the like sad thing about it, it's only 2 Magic 2s, and a lot of people within that BR bracket will have flares, and the gun is just not good enough, and the platform is just not good enough to actually make it perform very reliably. So yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we will see you guys in the next War Thunder video.